All right, greetings, class. This is our interview with Colin Davis. So Colin and I have known each other for many years, dating back to when I worked at Ascend Learning, and Ascend Learning was comprised of a lot of different business units, and we worked in separate business units, but we were really working on sort of the same objective, which was how do we create a more advanced data analytics program within our respective businesses. So whereas I worked on a lot of nursing projects as we went forward, Colin was working on allied health projects, and we'll certainly dive into that a little bit here with our questions. But really excited to have somebody of Colin's background and experiences to be able to share some of that with you guys, so you can hear about some of the careers that people have created. And I think it's a particular interest because when you think about data analytics, it's really evolved quite a bit in the last, let's call it 10 to 15 years. So it's really more of a newer field. And Colin, being a guy who, a little younger, has been able to kind of intentionally create something of his career around sort of this burgeoning ecosystem and these burgeoning opportunities. So great person to learn directly from the local area. And hopefully pick up a few insights from him from your paper, and as you make some decisions about your future career planning. So, Colin, thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So we'll just go ahead and dive right in. Maybe you could just share a little bit, or I was shared your name, but maybe a little bit around current role and what you're working on today.
Sure. So I guess I do think this is important, but like my background a little bit. So I'm wearing some KU gear here. I went to KU for undergrad, and I studied finance and marketing with the intent of going into like outside B2B technology sales. Pretty niche, I guess, career goal at the time. But long story short, I took my first role in an operations pricing role with a freight brokerage, which quickly became a data and analytics role about 9 months into that. And that kind of put me down this different career path, very different from what I thought I was originally going to do. So 5 years at the freight brokerage, 5 years at Ascend Learning, where Nate mentioned we met. And I've been at Kiewit now for almost 4 years. So Kiewit, if you're not familiar with it, very large construction and engineering firm, like one of the top contractors in the United States. If it's something really large, we probably build it. LNG facilities, power plants, roads, bridges, hospitals, light rail systems, etc. So I'm in a data analytics director position at Kiewit. I lead kind of 3 sub-teams, if you will, over different data domains. That's sort of how we're organized. So I have responsibility for our employee data, our safety data domain, which most companies won't have those, but it's very important in construction. And our procurement data domain as well, more like the supply chain logistics. How do we get materials to the job site at the right cost, et cetera?
Great. If you would maybe dive in a little bit around some of your academic choices in the education side, and kind of where you went, why you chose those tracks, maybe what led you to it, and that can be a blend of how that kind of links up to your workplace experience as well. Because for a lot of us, I think you're the same as me. Education really kind of walked along with us through our professional development. It wasn't kind of one of those you went for academia for a while and then you went and did work. Sometimes they kind of crossed over each other. So maybe if you could talk a little bit around those pieces and maybe how they kind of played together, that'd be great.
Yeah. So as I kind of mentioned, I went to undergrad to study. Well, first it was just marketing. And then I got some advice from someone a couple years older than me that already graduated that I should add something more. And no, this is not a bash on marketing, but like something a little more quantitative or substantive to like my resume. So it was easy to add a finance major with that, which I kind of naturally gravitated towards. I'm a little more kind of numbers and logic oriented. So that was kind of like the first step. And then I get into my working career and I find myself in this data analytics role, and I'm completely, I would say, on the job trained. When I was, I appreciate you said I was a little younger earlier on the call. I don't view myself as that much anymore, but it is nice to hear. But the point being that a career track in data analytics was not something I thought about in college. It is not something I could have pursued if I wanted to in college. There was no data analytics courses, degrees, whatever. So very on the job trained, but when I was at Ascend, they came out with a tuition reimbursement policy I had no intention of going to grad school, but I found Rockhurst University was starting a data analytics program. I took one course in what was called applied data mining, basically light or very basic predictive modeling. And it was my first class. I remember pretty distinctly. I went into it thinking if I was going to rate myself on a 1 to 10 scale of like how good of a data analyst I was, I probably would have thought I was like a 6 or 7, not great, but like decent, above average maybe. I walked out of my first class thinking I was less than a 1 because I, in 3 hours, learned about this entire space and field that I had no clue about prior to that. So I enrolled in a full-time program there to get an MBA with a focus in data science, which to me was, I want to say the best decision, like one of the better decisions I've made in my life. And the reason for that is like the degree is nice and it's good to have like the resume component to that, I should say, for like what you want to do long term in your career. So I don't want to discount that. But I learned so much on a nightly basis. I was doing classes 2 nights a week, and then I would literally apply it the next day at Ascend Learning to the work I was doing. And the amount of like the learning from that experience was, astronomically better than my personal learning in undergrad, where I would study, learn something, do fairly well on a test, not always retain, some of those marketing or finance concepts I studied. But the data analytics grad school work where I was learning and applying the next day, I can't think of a better learning experience.
Yeah, that's been mine as well. Whenever I've been able to pair application and real world experience with academia, I feel like I've been able to kind of make it stickier, see the value in it, realize the value in it. So yeah, it's tough to do. To your point, it's tough to kind of work and do education at the same time in that manner. But if you have the opportunity to do it, especially when you're younger, it can make a pretty lasting impact. In terms of just sort of the workplace background with Kiewit and with Ascend or maybe other roles, how do you see that? How do you see the education side of it, playing into that, some of those experiences, maybe a couple of specific examples that maybe stand out to you around where it really kind of set you up for success, or at least gave you some precursor for success?
Sure. I'll say the biggest piece of success for my current role, like when I was hired to the position I'm in now, I was kind of brought around to these different executives, and it was sort of funny to me. Again, not to like devalue like the MBA credential or higher ed in general, but a lot of people have college degrees, a lot of people have graduate degrees, right? So I didn't necessarily see it as much of a differentiator, but internally, like the way it was talked about, oh, he's got an MBA with a focus in data science, like he's the, this person that has this background that's going to be able to, we're here today, but he's got this background and pedigree that's going to help us to understand how we want to get from here to there, where we want to be kind of aspirationally from a data and analytics standpoint as an organization. So just the way it was received and valued by my peers and and the executives within the company was surprising to me, but in a really positive manner, right? So in short, I think it opened me up for opportunities that I was given, and now you got to take advantage of those opportunities, right? Like you're not going to be brought in and have these credentials behind your name, and it's not like you can do see work and still expect to advance in your career. So you got to take advantage of those. But I think it really helps set me up for success. Again, especially at Kiewit where I'm at today. Another thing I'll say, and this is maybe like tangential to your question, but what I see now from an academic standpoint really blows my mind for the technical talent that is available for, I hire a lot of folks that are 22, 23, 24 years old, pretty fresh out of school. Maybe they've had one other job. And the technical skills that these folks have today and how they're prepared to enter the workforce, again, at least from a technical standpoint, there's some other elements that I think could be brushed up better. It's, I would have had to struggle to find someone with 10 years of experience to do that kind of stuff 7 years ago. And so I think that like the whole data analytics programs were sort of coming on the scene. I want to say 2014, like 2012, there was maybe, I'm not sure there's a single graduate or undergrad program focused in data analytics or data science. Today, they're everywhere. And that's a really good thing because what that's produced is all this, what I would say younger or greener talent in the marketplace that is more equipped with technical skills that I had to stumble through and learn on the job and, probably didn't do so as fast as I should have, right? So those are two things, I guess, from an academic standpoint that really jump out to me.
Yeah, I think it's a really good comment around sort of reputation too. So, especially in like sort of burgeoning or niche skill sets, how do people understand when you come in, you meet hiring requirements, which usually requires an undergraduate degree, but a lot of times, if people are looking for something specific like that, even if you don't have a ton of experiences in it, just the fact that you've got to focus on something that is a key component of an initiative inside of an organization. It's kind of like a little bit of immediate reputation, and like you said, it opens doors. And like you said, I really want to echo this. Education sets you up for opportunities, but you have to take advantage of those opportunities, even if you don't have all the answers. And by the way, most places that you work for, they don't expect you to have all the answers, but what they want is they want you to be able to know how to find the answers or how to think about the answers in a critical way so that you can help them solve business problems. And that's ultimately the real value here. And I think that's a lot of what Colin's talking about as well. When you think about sort of like the career progression, so you've been in data analytics for, quite a while now. Do you see, some level of scaffolding, levels of competency in data analytics when you think about sort of yourself and how that's progressed over a period of time? And I guess maybe another way to say it is, you started as a novice, right? And now, and data analytics, pretty big field, right? So there's a lot of directions to go. How do you think about how you picked up experiences that, have led to, the I guess your toolkit that you have today?
Yeah, so I love this question, and it's genuinely something I think about a lot, right? So, I have like a lot of people, like I have my career ambitions, and like one comment I will make, and I think I made this comment to that class I was mentioning earlier that I spoke with recently, like the way I view my career today, the way I try to navigate it is different than I did 5 years ago and 10 years before that, or whatever the case may be, right? Like I think I've always been intentional about my career, but I guess I just want to, knowing it's a younger audience, like you don't have to have all the answers at 20 or 22 years old of like, oh, I want to be this in 4 years, this in 6 years, whatever the case may be. I've kind of just tried to do really well at the job I have some idea of what I want that next job to be. And then, you do a good job that certain opportunities are going to generally, present themselves. Anyway, I think I did want to make that point. I think I got off course from the actual question you asked. But, when I think about my career today, right, and this is something I've been mulling over for the last 5-6 years, really since I did grad school. So like the first decision point I made was, do I want to be a really, really strong technical resource? And by that, I mean, do I want to try to basically go be the best data engineer, data scientist I could possibly be? And what does that career path look like? Or do I have more of a passion for solving business problems and looking at data and analytics as my toolkit to doing so? And if so, what does that career path look like? So, it was kind of partially chosen for me because when I was at Rockhurst, the only data analytics graduate degree option was an MBA with a focus in data science. So that was like the only option. When I was about halfway through, they came out with this MS, so a master's in data science. So that was kind of I could have switched to do that, right? But as I look at like what I enjoy doing, like I like to view myself at least as a business problem solver. Like I'm very business oriented. I have the business background. I became technical because I kind of found myself in this space, right? I'm not a computer engineering degree by trade. And so the biggest thing for me is, okay, what is that decision point? What do I want to go do? So doing the MBA with a focus in data science helps me to be in that. I think that's going to help set me up for success and advancing up different leadership roles. You can certainly advance if you're going to be this like really, really talented data scientist. I mean, there's chief data scientist roles out there now, whatever the case may be. Um, I don't know if the ceiling might be a little higher, I guess, on the more business focused side. There's just more general opportunity there. But so once you make that decision, to your point, the space is extremely broad. Like you can't go be the best at everything. Like there's not enough hours in the day. There's too many other talented people. There's a new tool or a package within a coding software coming out every couple of weeks. And so I think it's important to spend time, like as you navigate your career, thinking about where I want to go, and then really spend time like on your own branding and like what differentiates you, right? I mean, I like the space I'm in now because I have enough of the technical hands-on experience. I'm never going to be the best data scientist. And as I mentioned, I'm hiring 23-year-olds today that can write Python code better than I can today or probably ever could. But I can liaise with the business better than those folks can based on my experience and my understanding of general business concepts. So I try to focus my niche around that.
Few things I love about what you said. One, I think a lot of people, especially younger people, think that there's a lot of structure and orderliness and intentionality to how their career is going to happen, and it's just really not the case, right? Best laid plans of mice and men kind of thing. So I think I think about myself going back. My first kind of W-2 job was working for University of Kansas in the aerospace labs as part of a Navy scholarship. But then my next job was working at a family Mexican restaurant for 3 years in high school. And then, if you'd asked me then what I was going to do, I would have told you I was going to be a lawyer because that's what my dad did. And there's no way, and I did pre-law for a little bit, and I quickly realized like that wasn't going to work. That was not a good fit, not a good interest, not a sustainable thing. And then you kind of work your way through different opportunities. You kind of figure out what you like because business in particular, is really diverse, and it's not just the industries. It's all the different departments you can work in, right? So I just think when you talk about intentionality, I think you're making a really good point, which is you don't have to have it all figured out. And in fact, most people really don't, and it's okay. They end up in good spots, as long as they work hard. Right.
Just a real quick point on that, like and I struggle to articulate this maybe as well as I'd like to. Like I have the thought, it's pretty clear to me in my own head, but like, how do I express it? That's not saying it's okay to like float and just like, well, I'm just going to wait around for whatever great opportunity, right? Like, I think it's really important to have some sort of near-term plan of what that next step might be. Identify it. What are the gaps between me and that next step? How do I go pursue it? Continue to do that. But in reality, there's likely going to be another opportunity presented that you didn't anticipate that you have to evaluate. And maybe it's a good point to make a pivot, right? So the point being, don't just sit there and wait for the opportunity to come and assume it's going to, because it may not. And that's going to that's not a very good plan, right? I'll just wait for whatever great opportunity presents itself. Like always have be intentional and thoughtful about what you want to do. You don't have to have a 10-year like tiered plan, but in reality, be open to the opportunities that present themselves and evaluate them and say, hey, maybe this is a great chance to go learn something new, to discover something I'm more passionate about. And most people I've talked to, even at my age of career, have had a couple of those things happen. That's like, well, I didn't think I'd be doing this or working for this company, but here I am, and it's going great.
I think it's also a great point, right? So, you can't have all the answers, but you can't have not some semblance of effort, some semblance of active thinking, some semblance of, hey, here's where I am today. I might like to be in another place in the next year or two, and I can kind of see that. How do I accomplish that? That's not an excuse for not having goals and not being an active thinker. And I'm kind of a big fan of a phrase from antiquity, which is fortune favors the bold. And it's not necessarily that the bold always have the best plans, right? A good plan is better than a great plan tomorrow. A good plan today is better than a great plan tomorrow. So I think you're right. I think a lot of the generation right now struggles a little bit with what am I doing next? How do I get from point A to point B? Should I be living the life here and kind of living in the moment, or should I be planning ahead, or what does all that look like, right? And the answer is there's infinite choice, right? There's infinite choice, and good news is if you're in a data analytics program or course, chances are you're probably a little bit of a planner. You're probably a little bit of logical type thinker in the first place. And I generally find that that people who have a little tilt towards logic tend to be a little bit more intentional. So you're probably a good mindset to begin with. Hey, real quick, when you think about that program at Rockhurst, what was your most enjoyable course that you did there?
Wow. Okay. I'm going to kind of cheat. I'm going to give three answers here, but they're all different. So the first one is I think it was called applied data mining. It's basically intro to predictive modeling, and it was taught in R programming language. And then they did an advanced course taught in Python, which I thought was great because they exposed you to both. But the value there was I didn't know a lot of this stuff was possible, and I had a really great professor who did a really good job of taking incredibly complex concepts and making them relatable to where you could understand them. Like, we weren't breaking down the math behind these algorithms, right? We only had 8 weeks, one night a week for this course. But learning what was possible was like the main takeaway from that. My second course I thought was my favorite is actually a business course, competitive analysis. And I love that. So that's like the business side of me, right? That's just, how does our business compete in this market? What are our headwinds? What are our tailwinds? I think we both did a lot of that work at Ascend. It was, a little analogous, but a little different. I loved that work because it's all about how do we position the business for growth, and let's look at the external forces and our internal capabilities and sort of measure against that. I think I wrote a 30-page paper for like the final for that class on like the fitness tracker industry, which I enjoyed writing the paper, which I'm pretty like math oriented. I never enjoyed writing papers. I enjoyed that. And then the last one I'll say, I actually went back after I graduated and took a course in text mining because the class was discounted at 50% off for my alumni status. And two, I didn't get a chance to take it when I was there. And, just the fact that I had chosen to be in this class, excuse me, I need something. The fact that I had chosen to be in this class and no one was forcing me to be there, I was literally there because I wanted to learn about this concept. And I was able to learn and actually apply it at my job, and I've been able to apply it to my job today. So I cheated by saying three, but like for different reasons at different stages in my career, or I guess my educational career, those all stood out.
That's great. I love the fact that you went back even after graduate school and decided, hey, I'm doing something here. I'm kind of interested in this text analytics. Yeah. I'm going to go do another class. I think again, education should be a series of on and off ramps, not necessarily just a part of the sequence. So I think important piece. When you think about your career so far in data analytics, what do you think's been the hardest thing?
Ooh, It's a really good question. I think getting to the point, all right, it's such a broad field. Getting to the point where you have confidence in your knowledge and abilities being as strong as they maybe are in reality. So there's different types of people. So we all probably know people that are like, they might know a little bit of information about something and think they're an expert, right? For me with data and analytics, I tend to err on the other side, right? It's like I just know how broad the field is and how big the space is. And, I got almost 15 years experience across 3 different companies, about 5 years apiece or so. But it's just like, I've only been at 3 companies. I've only seen 3 ways of doing things. We've only solved X number of problems. Like the world has to be so much bigger, and all these other companies solving problems in these similar ways. So I think historically, and especially before Kiewit, I maybe kind of undervalued some of my experience and knowledge of like what the right approaches were, because I would kind of think of it as, well, this approach worked at this company, but gosh, how would like Netflix do that? How would this company do? Like, they would probably do these things that are all, so much more advanced. And then anyway, I've just been able to like interact with more external companies. I have a better pulse on the industry, and you kind of get to this point where it's like, okay, maybe I do know a little bit more than I was maybe giving myself credit for. Like, I kind of think of it as like, you never, you always know a little bit more than you think you do, but at the same time, you never know quite as much as you think you do. Like it's like this right balance of give yourself credit that you have some expertise, but don't overstep and think that you have the entire industry figured out, because I don't think a single person does. I don't care what their title is, what company they work for. Like, I don't think that's reality.
That's great. Kind of looping and staying on the track of just sort of the workplace, environment. Yeah, and I know this is a big question, so feel free to take it whatever way you want to. But what do you think of the current state of data analytics in the workplace, modern workplace?
Um, uh, I love this. I like this more than the other question. Whatever when I commented, I love this. This one I have a lot of passion for. So I'll put it simply like this: the technical talent that I can recruit and hire and source for my teams has never been stronger. I think a lot of that's because of there's a lot of reasons, but it's like the programs and at the collegiate and graduate level, right, are the biggest differentiator to me. Um, Kids getting more interested in STEM and like coding at a younger age is probably a part of that as well. So while the technical talent has never been better, like there is to me a tremendous gap in leadership, and there's a gap in being able. So I think of the analytics process, simply put, as like three components. There's how do we deeply understand the business problems the organization is facing, and why those problems matter. If we were to solve them, what would be different? Would it drive decisions differently? Would we put some sort of policy in place? Like, and how would that actually impact the bottom line? So getting this contextual understanding before you even write a line of code or start chasing a problem, that's a huge skill set. Then there's the technical dev piece, and that can be anything from data collection, data engineering, data visualization, data science, whatever your technical data solution is. And then once you have that, how do you make that a success for the organization? If it's a customer facing product, well, actually, whether it's customer facing or internal facing, how do you market it? How do you make people aware of it? How do you help them understand it? How do you go out there and communicate who should be interacting with that tool, when, why, get their buy-in for it? So if you think about those kind of three steps, the middle step skill set has never been stronger. I have trouble, for sure, I have trouble finding, even developing skill sets on the first and third component there, but that's what it takes to like really build successful data products. And it's just this interesting like dichotomy to me that where, okay, this portion's never been better, but you can have the best data scientists in the world, best data engineers, whatever the case may be. If you're not solving relevant problems that truly matter for the business, and if you build something that nobody ends up using or understanding how to use, like I'll try to look at myself as a problem solver. So at the end of the day, it's like, well, did we solve the problem? Well, yeah, but we built this great model. It's very accurate and it does this, this, and this. Then when you like, did we solve the problem? Yes or no? It's a simple question. And if we didn't, now we got to figure out why we didn't do that and go attack it, right?
That's a great point. It's sort of like building a product without a customer. And I think there's some truth to that. I think in the data analytics world, there is so much technology, there is so much technical expertise, a lot of really smart people. But a lot of times people are building things because they can, not necessarily because they should. And that's to say that should being that somebody out there cares to consume it, right? And so you take a bit of almost like a product management, entrepreneurial approach to it, which I don't think a lot of people probably appreciate around data analytics. And it's kind of interesting, like CEO of Ascend, along with the kind of chief strategy guy, a number of years ago had said that they really felt like we were pretty limited, not necessarily around technical skill set, but around ideation of kind of product roadmap and how do we productize more and more of data analytics opportunities. And the reality is to your point, Colin, there's a dearth of talent out there, especially from a technologist side of things. But there's not necessarily a dearth of ability or talent around thinking about solutions or thinking about business problems or leveraging the stuff that's in front of us to run the business better. And so I think really good points. One thing I'd like to pick up on that I think would be really useful for the students So you're hiring, some younger talent, into Kiewit and onto your team. Could you talk a little bit around, what you look for in terms of, ideal candidates, sort of like, kind of fluffy and it changes, as years pass. So don't want to get iconoclastic with it, but if you're just thinking about things that you're looking for, either in academic experiences or, workplace experiences, or just sort of attitude, approach to the world. What are you looking for in some of the people that you hire?
Yep. Biggest things, problem solver. And I will like be repetitive about that, but like really that's what it is, right? Like the worst people to work with, I'm sure you've had this experience too, are the that's not my job people, right? Like you're on like a cross-functional team and it's like, well, I do web development. You gave me requirements, I did this, I stopped here, that's my component of the solution. Like, I'm done. Like, no, like we're collectively trying to solve a problem here. So sometimes you have to be able to step outside your lane and be okay with that. Um, Problem solving, critical thinking, because at least when you get to the stage of where you're working in like a professional environment, I don't know if that can be taught as much. I think at some point along the journey it maybe can, but we're talking someone who's got professional experience, right, working in a full-time role, being able to think critically about what it is you're working through and to make good decisions because of that. Your manager's never going to be able to prepare you for every situation, right? So you need people that can do that on their own, and that's how the organization is going to scale effectively. Problem solving, critical thinking. I look for great attention to detail. Like that's so critical in everything that we do. Like the code we write is complex, the tools we build are complex. We may package this nice thing together at the end, but all the subcomponents of breaking that down along this analytics continuum are incredibly complex, and someone needs to understand how they work in conjunction with each other. And the smallest mistakes lead to errors, breakdowns, gaps, et cetera, right? So people that don't have good attention to detail struggle in these types of roles. So I look at that above anything else. I've had mixed results doing this, but one guy that I inherited on my team when I started at Kiewit had the least amount of technical experience. He maybe was he'd done like a little bit of visualization work in Tableau, but his background was business and HR. This person is now one of our better data engineers because he had the aptitude for it. He had all these other really good components. Plus, he's a very good communicator, but he had the drive to become technical. So if all that other stuff is there, I'm not worried about teaching the technical. Like people can learn to code, right? It can be intense at first, but it's a logic oriented process. But if you can code but don't have these other elements, I'm not going to say that those resources can't be useful, but they're limited.
Sure. Yeah, I love the comment around attention to detail. So for all you students who get irritated with me commenting on your grammar and your English and your writing, that's exactly what we're talking about here. As a little bit of an antecedent to this is attention to detail. There's formality and structure, especially on the technical side of what you do with data analytics. And that's not the only place, right? So your ability to communicate effectively, your ability to do written communication effectively, really important, really important. And communication, honestly, one of the toughest skill sets that human beings develop and labor with their entire lives, right? How do we communicate with each other effectively? So another really good point there. Could you talk a little bit around maybe some edge innovation or applications that excite you? I know you recently went to like the data analytics conference in the world. Was there one or two things that really stood out to you that's kind of out the edge that's coming?
So I don't think there's anything necessarily from that conference. Or I mean, that was a lot more around like best practices for like organizing and maybe centralizing some of your analytics capabilities as an organization, which was very good. But like when you say like edge applications, to me, like an obvious one that I think most folks can relate to, I'm interested to see where like the self-driving automobiles go to, right? I'm curious what that roadmap looks like, but sort of from a utilitarian perspective, what does that look like in the future, right? I mean, you think about things like drunk driving, fatigue driving, and the accidents and the loss of life that creates. Well, and I'm sure there's going to be issues, right, with autonomous vehicles as well, but at what rate, right? Like what is the net gain societally there? I think is very interesting, and how they build, and I'm certainly not an expert on it, but how they build and program that intelligence into the vehicle is really, really incredible, right? Having the vehicle understand everything that's around it, much like a human would, whilst trying to drive a car. And that is something that I think, from an AI perspective, that could be replicated. There's certain things I don't think probably can, but like that one could be replicated. Another one that excites me personally, and I don't know, I think there's groups out there trying to figure this out, but I think of the healthcare space. So I don't even know for myself, let's say my last 20 years maybe of healthcare records are digitized, maybe. They're probably digitized across 30 different doctors, right, or different types of practices, right? I'll have like a skin doctor that I'll go to, dentist, general doctor, whatever the case may be. But like looking into the future, I think there's tremendous opportunity from a healthcare and like a population health management too, from younger generations who are going to have, and I don't know if it's even the class that you're teaching, right? I don't know if they're fully digitized. Maybe some are, but let's say anybody being born today is going to have a full digital healthcare record. There's going to be a better chance that those healthcare records can be blended across the multiple providers they'll see across their lifetime. So that's just healthcare management. Then you think about like DNA sequence mapping. So what am I predisposed to from a risk standpoint, from a healthcare standpoint, based on my DNA makeup? How does that overlay now with my health history, or my family's health history, right? Which if we had this whole digital trail, and then you think about like the active wearables. Again, I did write this, I alluded earlier, I wrote this paper on it a while back, but I've kind of had this idea for a while. You start to blend that data in with lifestyle, right? Of how somebody's taking care of themselves. And I think you get this longer term, there's got to be opportunity for better healthcare management. That's not data, it's not automated, but like think about your doctor being recommended so many better choices that they can then apply their critical thinking to and give you better treatment or prescription based on all these data elements they do not have today. What they have today is what you tell them is ailing you and the records that they have on file for you. That's about it.
That's great. Healthcare, huge opportunity. You think about things like interoperability between, these platforms, these, electronic health record platforms. I think you bring up a great point, which is, depending on what generation you've been born into, the digitization of you as a person, is different than say me or you, where, over the last 15, 20 years, more and more of that data has been coming online, right? And, how do you connect those data points over a lifetime to create, healthier humans, more intelligent humans, as we all, seek to get the most out of life. So I think great point. I'll kind of merge two questions together because I think, as I think about them, they kind of play together a little bit. As we think about the state of sort of ethics in technology and data analytics, this is really coming up a lot, and you see it in government regulations around even things like who owns their data, what can they do with the data? Can somebody get their data back? And you think about it through the lens of maybe even artificial intelligence. And, that's, on a lot of people's minds because everybody sort of thinks like, hey, the robot, the AI is going to, Skynet. I'm probably dating myself here with Terminator, but Skynet's, gonna hit the button and, nuke the world or whatever. But, legitimate questions, some of them, are just, fears, but maybe talk a little bit around your views, the state of ethics, development around things like artificial intelligence or, data analytics programs.
Sure. No, I'll probably limit this to, because it's such a broad topic, I'll try to limit it to like my experience, like things like that I think that I've had to think through, right? So first and foremost, like I have responsibility for employee analytics. So like that right there is its own ethical concern. So in order to do our jobs on that side of the house, I have to employ a team of people that can see sensitive information about other employees, right? And so one, just making sure that they they understand the weight of that responsibility and that I'm crystal clear about the expectations around that, right? Like I've told these team members, you may have access to salary information. You may come across it, someone's salary based on an analysis you're doing or something you're asked to do for a business purpose. But if I ever catch wind that you are just looking up a peer or someone's salary because you understand what they want to make, I consider that a fireable offense, right? I mean, that's just I can't be more clear that you cannot do, and like that's just an example, right? So there's that aspect of it, which is fairly niche because it's employee centric. But on a broader level, I think you have to ask yourself, okay, if I'm building a model, if I'm building a solution, and it requires some sort of data that may be considered private, or just even if it doesn't, what is the intent of my solution? So some of the solutions we've built are trying to curate and create a better employee experience. And so I think that matters. Like if you're building something to try to manipulate somebody into doing something, or if you put something out there that you need to think through what the unintended consequences are. So for example, we've looked at, and I'm not going to comment like deeply on this, but like we've looked at employee attrition modeling. But the rub there is the intent may be, let's identify who may be signaling they might be likely to quit and identify why that might be. And let's work to retain those employees because we value them. We care about their experience. It's certainly better for the business. It's usually better for the employee. So it's this good intent. But what if somebody got that information and said, oh, I see that Nate is likely to quit. Well, I don't really like Nate anyway. Let's terminate him because he's probably going to quit anyway. Well, that's, a very, there's legal ramifications there too, right? But like that's an ethical concern of like, do I want to build a tool that could give somebody the ability to do that? And if that is a risk, how am I going to mitigate that, right? And then there's a whole, your class can look it up, like there's a whole, wide topic around model data, machine learning model bias. So let's use that same example. Or let's say we build a model of who we should hire and who we should not hire, which is a dangerous concept just in general, because there's regulations there. But what if your model was biased negatively or positively towards a different group, especially a protected class? Very, very big problem, right? Could get you into some legal hot water. So like there's a legal concern but also I think an ethical concern with that component.
Yeah, those are great examples, and you're right. The ethics field around this is big and only growing, and only evolving as more tools come out and we kind of advance here. I would like to maybe take a moment because I know this is on some of my students' minds. Maybe just give us your quick thoughts on artificial intelligence as being a practical thing. Where do you see it being advancing and being useful, say in the next 5 years? How do we see it evolving?
Yeah, so I mean, I gave the autonomous vehicle example. I think that's one of the ones that most folks are aware of and can relate to, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, the Boston Dynamics, like robot dogs are cool. Like, I'm not sure of the application of them yet. I think I think we'll be able to automate some things like potentially like package delivery at some point in the future. I mean, that on about 5 years, that doesn't seem too far off. I guess two comments, I guess. In general, I think it's going to replace certain types of work that people are doing today that can be like, if it can be automated, it's likely somebody will try to do that because there's likely going to be a cost savings there, right? But I don't think of that as like, oh, the end of the world, there's not going to be enough jobs. Like, no, we can, now we can use our human brains to do things that only humans can do because maybe I'm being limited in my AI beliefs here, but like, I don't know if we'll ever see like the kind of intelligence in our lifetimes that can really do truly innately human things, right? They require complex decision making that we probably even have a hard time explaining or understanding. So if we can't explain it or understand and rationalize our decisions, how the hell can we train a machine to do that on thousands or millions of records, right? And then another comment would be, I personally like the idea of AI recommending solutions filtered through the lens of an expert. So I'll use the example of, I don't want to go to the doctor and have it be like WebMD on steroids, where I punch in my systems, it looks at my health record, and it's like, you have this, here's some amoxicillin. I want the computer to do that, and to leverage all of this data that it may be able to pull from and make a recommendation to my doctor who knows me, who is trained, who can do some critical human thinking. And I want them to factor that in as a decision point, but not have that make the decision for me, right? So I think that's where we'll see a lot of AI advancement in our lifetime. It's not just the true automation and replacement of, but how do we augment certain things today to be more efficient? Because my doctor can't possibly know as much as a computer can if it's trained on millions of similar records. His or her experience won't have that, right? But their experience to me is still valuable, and they know me, and I still want that element.
Yeah, I think the continuation of the conversation around healthcare is really interesting. And I know for both you and I, having worked in the healthcare field, in ed tech, is pretty core experience for both of us, and seeing some of this stuff come to fruition is really interesting. And I agree. I think just even the connection of the data, around incremental solutions is what we'll see. There not in our lifetimes will you see some kind of grandeur that you see painted in the movies. We're pretty long way, if ever, going to be able to accomplish that kind of deal. So, hey, we'll finish up with a couple lighter questions for you. What's your favorite data analytics book?
It's actually sitting right here. I read it fairly recently. Effective Data Storytelling by Brent Dykes. Like that, there's certain things that, and maybe it's a little confirmation bias because I have some opinions now about the space, and I find myself doing a lot of head nodding while reading like what he wrote of like exactly like I could just relate to it. I think it's a really, really, really good book. Even if you don't have experience in the field yet, I would recommend that one for sure.
Cool. What's the application you use the most, whether it's work or personal, for data analytics?
SQL and Python. SQL and Python. I mean, and one thing I would stress, and maybe you're going to ask this, but like, if you truly, as a student, want a career in the data analytics space, find a way to get involved in some sort of data engineering. In fact, if I could go back and start my career over, right, if I was doing it today, I would go be a data engineer for 2 to 3 years, because that gives you this fundamental understanding of data collection, cleansing, reconciliation, this whole pipeline process that makes everything else possible that you cannot possibly, you just can't have that understanding unless you've done it. Like it's impossible. So SQL and Python are, I think, going to be your best tool sets for that.
Awesome. And just sort of, any final thoughts, for the students?
Well, if you're not interested in a data analytics career, fully support that. I wasn't either, right? I kind of stumbled into it. But if you are, I mean, I think it's going to continue to be a good space for a long time. And I want to be cautious how I say this, but the technical skills are important and you need to acquire them. You need to put them into practice, whether it's doing personal projects, internships, getting your first job, whatever the case may be. So I don't want to say technical skills are not important, but one thing I see happening is over the next 10 to 15 years, I do think the ability you're going to have to separate yourself based on your technical skills will be diminished. I think technical skills, whilst really critical, are being more commoditized. They already are today than they were 7, 8 years ago. And what I mean by that is like people are coming out of programs with a lot of technical talent at age 22, 23 that didn't exist 10 years ago. The tools that people are using are getting easier to use. A la more people can pick them up faster. The tools that are being built on top of that are being able to automate. You look at like a Databricks doing auto ML. They're automating some of the basic fundamental components. So if you look at like the way the skills are going and the third-party tools that are being built, being able to write really great Python to build data science models, whilst again, I would encourage you to become competent at that. I don't think that's going to get you the job you want in 12 or 15 years. So think beyond that, right? How else are you going to separate yourself? And I think the best thing you can do is be the person that can solve problems utilizing that skill set. Don't just get comfortable in the skill set. Go be a business problem solver and see it all the way through the end, and make sure that whatever you've built, whether it's a report, machine learning tool, whatever, actually has the positive impact on business it's supposed to. Because it's the people that can do those things that I believe are going to be in the best position to take, leadership roles and to continue to grow their careers as the technical skills become commoditized.
That's great. Yeah, awesome interview. Tons of great content. We could keep going on probably for another hour. But I think being able to digest all this, especially as younger folks, will be a lot to think about. Really appreciate you taking the time with this group and helping them think about their careers and their academic track and how they might want to achieve some of these things.
Sure, absolutely. I was happy to do it, and I hope something I said was useful.
Absolutely.